Hi, I'm Albin Lotrich. I'm a Senior Technical Consultant at Docentric.
And my name is Anya Kolungia and I'm Software Architect at Docentric. Today we are here to talk about two complex D365F&O frameworks and how Docentric transforms them into user-friendly experiences. One is electronic reporting, which Albin will talk about. Then I will cover the warehouse labels and, in particular, license plate labels.
As a sponsor, we will use the opportunity to first say a few words about our company. Here at Docentric, we are specializing in reporting and document automation. For over a decade, our mission is to provide a great report designer for your business documents and to deliver the document distribution features that are missing in the standard D365FO. When it comes to creating, printing, emailing, distributing, and archiving business documents, thousands of end users, consultants, and developers worldwide have come to rely upon Docentric. As an introduction, Sonia will now present our fantastic template designer, which is a common point of our two main today's topics, electronic reporting and license plate labels.
The Docentric Template Designer is an add-in for Microsoft Word, which allows your non-technical employees, such as key business users, business analysts, and functional consultants, to design the reports for D365F&O. A common approach when designing a new Docentric template is to split the process into two phases. In the first phase, you only think about the document design or layout. Here is one possible result of this phase. It is a rather classic design with a touch of eye-candy elements. Think of this as a report blueprint or a report mock-up, how I like to call it. It should be a good representation of what you want to get as a final output when you print a report. If you like a pure classic design, similar to a standard SSRS or standard electronic reporting format, you can produce something like this. And if your business allows it, you can be bold and creative in this step and end up with something like this. Once you're happy with the mockup and all stakeholders sign it off, it is time for the second phase, using the Docentric templating tools to transform it into a fully functional Docentric template. I will use the first mockup for this demonstration. The process is extremely simple. Go through all these static sample values and replace them by the dynamic content. Let's do a few of them together. When we install the Docentric Designer, we get this additional tab in Microsoft Word ribbon. It contains the Docentric templating tools. Right now, only this first icon is enabled, which tells me that I need to import the information about the report data source structure or schema. Once I do it, icons on the toolbar become enabled and we are ready to go. The process now goes like this. To replace this static mockup text by the dynamic content, I select it and click the field tagging element. Binding dialog automatically appears, where I can select the data source field. This means that in runtime, the content of that field will be printed in this place. Of course, I can also use some expressions to get the result of some calculation instead of the field value. We have one fantastic feature that is called Live Preview. When I turn it on, I get in real time the design rendered based on some sample values that were imported together with the report data source schema. Here I can see the sample data. It was generated based on one purchase order that had one header, which is expected, 7 lines and one text line. And somewhere in it, there is also this purchase ID value that is printed in Live Preview. Let's search for the purchase ID field, and here we see the same value as in the preview. I can change this value in the sample data, and I immediately see the correct result in the Live Preview. I will also apply a field tagging element instead of the purchase order date, and I will use a short date format to present it. Here in Europe, multilingual reports are a must, so I will also add one label tagging element instead of the fixed caption for the purchase order number. I select the caption I want to replace and click the label tagging element. In the binding, I will point to the purchase ID field, which means that I want its label applied here. Right now, the output in Live Preview is based on the English runtime language, but I can easily change the language in which I want to preview. For example, I will select the Spanish, and we see the Spanish translation of this label in the preview window. Notice that also the culture of the selected preview language is applied to all formatting, in this case the date. Let's see how we go about the purchase order lines. We don't need all 3 table rows, so I will keep only one and select it. To specify that it should be repeated with every purchase order line, I will click the list tagging element, which is our repeater, and in the binding dialog I will select the collection of purchase order lines. This means that whenever there is a new purchase order line, and remember we saw 7 of them in our sample data, this whole content from the selected line should be repeated. And you see we got 7 rows in preview with this same static content in each of them. Now we need to replace the static line values with the dynamic content from the report data source. I will do it only on the example of item description and item ID. You see how our preview becomes more and more like a real report result. So far, we have used the field, list, and label tagging elements. Honestly, that's what you need 95% of the time. Let's see what else we've got here. Sometimes we need to group the lines before doing some aggregations on them, such as sum, min, or max. That's where we use the group and sum tagging elements. Image tagging element is used to bring the images from the report data source, such as company logo or item images. We use the if tagging element to conditionally show or hide parts of the layout. And there are some less frequently used tagging elements, which I'm not going to discuss now. I hope you got some feeling how user-friendly this tool is. I could finish the whole process on this document in less than half an hour, which is pretty impressive. But this is just the beginning, because bringing all elements to the layout usually takes some 10 to 20% of the total time when developing a design in SSRS. Another 80 to 90% you usually spend on testing and fine-tuning against various combinations of data, different conditions, large amounts of lines, different languages, and so on. Thanks to the possibility to modify the sample data directly here and to see the result immediately in the live preview, that duration is decreased 5 to 10 times. To summarize, ease of use and accelerated testing make the Docentric Designer a must for companies who are looking for an efficient and professional templating tool, not to mention our fantastic support and more than 60 ready-made designs for most commonly used reports. Now that you have an idea how our template designer works, Albin will show us what is uncomfortable in electronic reporting and how the Docentric Designer solves it.
A fair way to discuss and compare the tools is to create the same layout in them. That's why I plan to create 3 templates for purchase order. The first one will be CBD based on Excel format, the second one will be CBD based on Word format, and the third one will be the Docentric template, which is also designed in Microsoft Word. We will create the same design from scratch with all 3 tools. We will measure the time needed for each of the designs, including the mandatory configuration. Once we are done with the designs, we will compare the speed and simplicity when working with these tools. Let's start with a CBD based on Excel format. Here I have already installed standard Microsoft configurations for purchase order. Model mapping, and 2 formats, one Excel and one Word. We will need to create our own configurations, one for Excel and one for Word. Before that, it is a good idea to quickly analyze what Microsoft has provided. I'm going to open the Excel template. I will find it as an attachment to this format configuration. When I click the Open button, the attachments will be downloaded to my download folder, and I will open it from there. And in F&O, I will go back to the configuration and check its design. Important thing to know about the CBD Excel template is the following. Everything you want to present on it needs to be linked to a named range. Each area in Excel and each cell where something is to be printed out is a named range. We see a list of defined name ranges in this lookup. All these ranges match to what we see in F&O on the Format Designer configuration. After this introduction, we can design a new Excel format. We will take these steps. We will open a blank Excel document and first create a mockup Excel. Once we are satisfied with our mockup, we will work our way through it to specify the named ranges for the layout areas and all cells where some dynamic output is planned. Back in F&O, we will add a new format configuration for our Excel format. We will leave the new format configuration empty. Then we will simply import the ranges specification from Excel into the format configuration. Now let's perform these steps. I will now play a pre-recorded video with some significantly accelerated sections. But I have started a timer at its very beginning, and we will see a real duration at the end. I have created a new blank Excel document. At the top, I am entering 3 header fields for the PO number, PO date, and vendor name. There are captions on the left side and some mockup values on the right side. At runtime, these values will come from F&O. It is inconvenient that we don't know exactly how long the real values coming from the system will be, so we try to anticipate how much space we need here. Later, when we apply the design and test with various POs, we might need to come back and fine-tune the cell widths. If at this moment we expect some longer content, it is not a good idea to make the cell wider because we will ruin the whole Excel grid. It is much better to merge few cells into one wider cell. Below these header fields, we will want to present the lines. To make it simple, we will only have 3 fields in each line: item ID, item description, and line amount. I find it convenient to first mark where I plan to have the lines, so I have used some borders and coloring. I know that item descriptions might be white, so I have used the same trick as in the header with merging multiple cells into a larger cell. I have entered static captions in the header row of this area and some mockup values in one line. Now, whenever we expect to show some dynamic content coming from the system in runtime, we need to apply a named range. Notice that I will use fixed captions instead of labels to avoid an additional overhead, so I won't need name ranges for them. I'm using some meaningful names for the ranges so that I can later easily recognize them. This is the most time-consuming, annoying, and error-prone part of this process. Now my simple Excel template is finished, and I need to add a new F&O format configuration to use it. I have selected the model and then created the new format configuration based on it. Now we got our new empty format configuration. We go into the designer for this format, and instead of manually adding the nodes, we simply import its structure from the previously created Excel. As you can see, I have stopped the timer at this moment. We can say a few more words about this configuration. When we expand the sheet node, we recognized all the named ranges we have previously specified in our Excel. To finish this format configuration, we would need to bind each element from the format designer tree to a matching element from our model on the right side of this form. But that usually goes relatively fast, so I will skip that step because it isn't crucial for this presentation. I will now add 1 minute to the timer to approximately compensate for binding of 6 fields and 2 ranges. With this, we have finished the process of creating a new CBD Excel format configuration from scratch. Next, 2 approaches are using Microsoft Word to design the templates, one as CBD Word format configuration and one as Docentric template. We will also need a mockup for these 2 templates. This time it will be a mockup created in Microsoft Word. We will use the same mockup for both templates, so we will measure the time needed to create this common mockup and add it later to individual times. I will leave the Excel mockup to have a reference design. As previously, this will be an accelerated movie, but the timer is counting and displaying the real time, and I have started it now. I have created a new blank MS Word document. I have first added 1 table with 2 columns and 3 rows to represent the document header. I have added the captions on the left side and mockup values on the right side. I can easily adjust the column widths based on the anticipated content size, so I don't need to waste time on merging the cells as I needed to do in the Excel format. Few empty lines just in case, and then I have added 1 more table where the purchase order lines will be printed. We need 3 columns and several rows. We don't know for sure right now. I have colored it in a similar way as in Excel previously. Some fixed captions in the title row and mockup values in the row that will be later replaced by the dynamic content, a little bit of adjusting the column widths, and we are done. Save the file and stop the timer. That's the time we will add to the next 2 templates. Now we will create a CBD Word template and add it as a format configuration. Word format configurations are dependent on their parent Excel configurations, which you can also see with the original Microsoft formats. We want to keep and reuse the configuration made for Excel. That's why we will start from the previously created Excel configuration, mark it as complete, otherwise we won't be able to derive from it, and create configuration which will derive from it. This derived configuration will also have an Excel template as an attachment, which we don't want and don't need, so we will simply open the Attachments forum and delete the existing Excel attachment. We need to create our CBD Word template and attach it instead, but the question is, how to get the model configuration connected to that template? There is a simple trick to achieve it. Add a new attachment and upload a blank Word document. Go back to the format configuration and select this new attachment as a template. Download this attachment and open it. In XML mapping, there will be a report part where we will recognize the same elements as in the format configuration. So let's start a timer and do this. I'm starting a timer, selecting our Excel format configuration and marking it as complete. While it is selected, create configuration derived from it. Click the Attachments button and delete the existing attachment, which is just a copy of the parent Excel template. In the attachments, I add a new attachment and upload the mockup. We just go back to the Format Designer forum, where we need to specify the template. We select this file, which is anyway the only available. We again open the Attachments forum, where we open the attached Word template. You will probably work on a cloud environment where you can work directly on this open attachment, and once you close the Word document, it will be still attached to this configuration. But I am demonstrating this from my Tier 1 dev box, so I will have to upload the final result once again. I opened that downloaded file and go to Developer tab. On the Developer tab, I click the XML mapping pane, and under the XML mapping, I select the report part. As you can see, we have the elements from our format configuration. In the layout, we need to go and replace the mockup values with so-called content controls. That's how templating is implemented in Microsoft Word. We select the element from the XML tree, right-click it, insert content control, and we select the type of control we want. For the fields, we pick the plain text. When we enter a content control, this is what we get. Template would work if I left it like this, but it is a common approach to use the properties to better describe this control. When I turn on the design mode, this is what I get. For the lines, we select the table row where the lines should be printed. In the XML tree, lines are a content that should be repeated, so the only available content control on them is repeating. It will appear around the whole table row I've selected, and now we need to add a content control for each of the fields in the line in the same way how we did it for the header. We save this file, and if you work on a cloud environment, you have finished working on the attachment, but I need the following workaround. Go back to the attachments on my Word format configuration, delete the previous attachment, upload this last Word document, and reselect the template back in the Format Designer forum. I will not work on mapping because I didn't do it with Excel neither, so I will just stop the timer, add the time needed earlier for the MS Word mockup, and that is the time I've spent for the CBD Word template. And finally, we will demonstrate the process of creating Docentric template from scratch. We will use the same mockup as a starting point, but we also need to get the information about the model. We do it by enabling an option in Docentric setup to generate the data source while report runs. Data source will be generated as one XML file. Next, we execute the report once to get that XML file. Here I have started the timer and printed one purchase order confirmation to generate the XML with data source. Next, I open the mockup Word, and in the Docentric toolbar I import this XML. I go through the three fields in header, and for each I click the field tagging element to insert it instead of the mockup value. Binding dialog automatically appears where I select the field which I want to bind to this control. The name of the field is automatically displayed in the design, so it is easy to identify the fields. I open the live preview where I automatically see the results based on the sample values collected from the purchase order I've used for creating the data source XML. If the values are too long, I see immediately how to adjust the table columns. In the table with lines, I select the table row with the mockup values and click the list tagging element. It is a repeater which needs to be bound to some record set. In this case, I will bind it to the list of purchase order lines in the data source. We see in the preview window how for each of the purchase order lines, our table row with static mockup values has been repeated. Now we only need to go through all fields and replace them by the content from the corresponding lines. For that, we again use the field tagging elements and bind them to the matching line fields. If needed, we adjust the column widths, and our Docentric template is finished. We only need to configure that this template should be used, so in the Docentric report setup, I will upload this last version of the template instead of what I previously had. And I can stop the timer and increase it for the duration of preparing the mockup, as we did with the CBD Word template. Here is the comparison of our three approaches. We see the total time needed to create these three types of templates from scratch and to configure F&O to use them. The difference is obvious, and that is only based on 6 fields. Imagine you are dealing with approximately 100 fields, so multiply these times by a factor of 20. And these are some final thoughts on the best approach for F&O report templates. CBD templates provided by Microsoft can be useful when it is enough to make some minor modifications. But if the documents should follow the graphic style of other company documents, then you need to start from scratch, and we saw how time-consuming it can be with merely 6 fields. Designing the mockup in Excel is harder than in Word. It is because we are constrained by the Excel's cell grid, where we cannot freely modify one part of the layout without breaking the rest of the grid. Specifying named ranges in Excel is the most time-consuming part of the process. Tagging the content controls in CBD Word template is something faster, but still huge time waster. In this experiment, we only measured the time needed for creating an initial layout, but that is just part of the process. Once we have the initial layout, we need to test against various documents, data combinations and volumes, different languages, etc. This is where Docentric shines. Through live preview and sample data modification, it will boost your productivity by decreasing the total template implementation time by a factor of 5 to 10. We have seen how Docentric replaces the inconvenient CBD templates by an efficient and user-friendly Docentric designer. I'm giving the word back to Sanja so that she can show us how license plate labels don't need to be hard if you use Docentric.
This last part of our presentation will be especially important for companies dealing with warehouse labels. At this moment, Docentric offers alternative for license plate labels. Wave labels will be supported soon as well. In the processes around license plate labels, the most painful element is ZPL layout. Development and maintenance of ZPL layouts is difficult, uncomfortable, and time-consuming, but fortunately, you can use the Docentric designs instead. And once you switch to Docentric designs, you can use everything that our designer offers, like barcodes, images, multilingual support based on a selected language, and so on. Docentric runs on the top of SSRS framework, so we introduced one dummy SSRS report named DOTS WHS License Plate Label Report. Here below in its report setup, we see few templates. The first 2 are provided by Docentric as part of our license plate label solution, and you can quickly add additional templates. I will download our SSRS-based template and turn on Live Preview. We can use here everything that our designer has to offer. We already demonstrated it in the first part of this session. You can simply test your design through Preview in Designer and through Preview from D365FO. We will see it quickly in action. Let's check the form for license plate labels. Here you see how we have added these 2 new menu items. Let's see this one, Print Label. We can print and reprint based on the document routing setup, but we can also override the setup and specify directly here how and where we want to print the currently selected label. I will use the Print Without Setup by Docentric option because it offers some useful features. Here I can select the template I want to use, the language, printer and number of copies, But what is interesting here, I can directly preview the result for the current license plate label. When I'm happy with the result, I can also print directly from here. We can check the document routing agent and see the result. Let's quickly print the same license plate label from this form, but this time through ZPL layout, just so that we can compare the information available in document routing agent. You can see how much more informative the record from Docentric is. As you see, we can also print based on the setup, so let's go into the document routing form and see that setup and how we have simplified it. A big pain with license plate labels is a complex and hardly manageable document routing setup. To simplify it, we have extended the document routing form by introducing the queries for the document routing lines. As a result, you will have a manageable number of configurations, which you will fine-tune on the line level. And if you are still not sure which configuration will be used for a given combination of label and user, you can test the document routing setup to get extensive information about the applicable configurations. We do it by clicking the Test Setup menu item. We get this form, where we can play with different combinations of label ID and mobile device user ID to see which document routing printers would be applicable to it. What else is frustrating with the standard solution? You have a fixed dataset where you cannot add additional information. We give you a chance to add additional data in 3 different ways. In a Docentric way, through our DSP class customization, then by extending the report query implemented by us, and for electronic reporting lovers, we also provide electronic reporting model and model mapping configurations together with the Docentric template based on that data source, so you can derive from these electronic reporting configurations. Let's summarize the improvements Docentric brings to the license plate labels framework. Let's review what we have seen today. We started by presenting the powerful and user-friendly Docentric template designer. Then, we discussed what is inconvenient with Excel and Word formats for configurable business documents. We measured and compared the times needed to create and configure a simple template as CBD Excel, CBD Word, and Docentric template designer. Docentric designer was a clear winner. And at the end, we saw how Docentric simplifies and improves the processes related to license plate labels.
With this, we are finishing our presentation. I hope you have enjoyed it, and I'm sure that you've got some new ideas about how you can put your report template design on the fast track.
Wait a second, Albin. We almost forgot to announce the Dynamics Minds conference. I have a special invitation to an awesome Dynamics 365 and Power Platform community conference, Dynamics Minds. It is going to take place from 22nd to 24th May this year on the beautiful Mediterranean coast of Slovenia. Visit the dynamicsminds.com website to find out more about this magical event. And we hope to see you all there. Till May, goodbye and thank you.
If you liked what you saw, contact us to try out everything we have shown you today and much more. You won't be disappointed. Thank you for watching us and have a great day. Bye.
Bye.